In the case of Spanish, the sources are perhaps of two kinds. So you can talk about two kinds of sources. One of them we might call them official sources, if you like. As you know, as most of you probably know, since the early 18th century, Spanish, the language, is regulated, as it were, by a Royal Academy of Language, very much following the French model as well. So there's actually an academy that follows a prescriptive approach to language, in that it publishes dictionaries, which are basically, as I said, inventories of the words that are acceptable in the language. And it's the Royal Academy of Language, for example, that decides which loan words or new words that come into the language deserve inclusion in the Royal Academy Dictionary, the DRAE, the Diccionario de la Real Academia Española. So they've got other products as well. They've got grammars, they've got the Diccionario Pan-Hispánico de Dudas, and other things, But they're well renowned for being very slow at taking on new words as they happen. People have been using bloguear, we were talking about that earlier, for years already, before they decide it's a word worth including. So it's a very conservative type of institution from that point of view. But the bilingual Commons Dictionary draws not only on official sources, and this is what makes it distinctive and special, but it draws from sources that derive from the native speakers, very much like Percival did all those years ago. So in the 70s, the news was that miniskirt was in the dictionary, and that was quoted in one of the reviews. It was the first edition of the dictionary at the time. This was 1971, Mary Quant and all that. But by the 90s, for example, the dictionary had adopted words like familias monoparentales, single-parent families, which were again a reality at the time. So that is, as I say, an example of the evolution of the dictionary. The sources used were the press, media, literature in general, but it was a hard task. It was in those days there was no internet. It seems difficult to believe. There was a kid the other day asked the teacher, he said, "Teacher, do you know that in the past people used to memorize telephone numbers?" And he responded, I said, "You know what to say?" He said, "Yes, I do." As a matter of course, I do. In those days, there was no internet, so as I say, we worked with databases and with modern tools like that, but I'm sure it's nothing like what you have at your fingertips at the moment. You can have spider engines that crawl the net, looking for new words, looking for things that are not in the database, constantly, for example, to refresh those data, to take decisions later on whether you're going to be including them in the next edition of the dictionary or not. Whereas in those days, it all had to be taken from written sources. People had to actually read, personally, screeds of publications, newspapers, magazines, the media, listen to the telediarios. Nowadays, as I say, the task has been made easier on the one hand, but it's probably more daunting on the other because of the massive amount of information available, and the need to be discriminating about it. The other piece of work that I did that I thought was very important was to provide translations, as I mentioned, for the English-Spanish side of the dictionary. Not providing a translation in those days was tantamount to failure. It was like a cop-out. You were a translator, you were supposed to translate, So, as a last resort, we were allowed to give glosses, to give an explanation of the term. But as I said, the dictionary in those days was adopted, was included in quite a lot of culturally laden terms that were difficult to translate. I remember having a terrible time with things like lollipop lady, for example, or quango. You remember quangos? And double whammies and things like that. Well, I'd had to do that. They came my way as well. Those things. Okay, so we're now here celebrating 40 years of the unabridged Colin Smith Dictionary. As I mentioned at the beginning, and this is the point I was trying to make, this is an every month dictionary. It's certainly the preferred dictionary of academics, students and professionals. It was the first dictionary that was recommended to me when I started to do my English degree in Spain in 1980. It was a by the Collins dictionary. If it's not in the Collins, you'll not find it anywhere. It's still the reference dictionary because, as I said, it's permeable. It soaks in stuff. It adapts, it moves on, it's organic, it moves on with the times. It includes, and this is of special value to students of Spanish, all the varieties of the language in America, which is, it gives an ample treatment, a very concise, but at the same time thorough and comprehensive treatment of the varieties of Spanish over the Atlantic. It's a main work of reference for students and professionals alike. Most of the examinations for court interpreters, for example, that take place in Spain, for example, or in the States, you know how they allow you to take dictionaries into the examination room. You know, some people actually doing trolleys or stuff. You know? Really wise people bring in the Collins Dictionary, and if it's not in the Collins, then it will not be anywhere else, probably. I like to think that some of my contribution, and indeed the many people that contributed to the dictionary in many ways, not just working as I did in freelance basis for all those years in different editions of the dictionary, but even not so anonymous people, users of the dictionary like yourselves. My wife, for example, is a graduate of Glasgow University, and she's a doctor in Hispanic Studies. And when she was doing her year abroad, during her degree program in Zaragoza, well, she was using the Collins Dictionary as one does when they're doing a degree, and she found something that had to be commented on. Maybe this was missing, I can't remember exactly what the term was, but she wrote to Professor Smith at Cambridge University, and he wrote back to her, thanking her for the contribution, and lo and behold, in the next edition, in very small print, together with scores of other people that I'm sure have written also to Professor Smith, and indeed to Collins publishers, with things to comment on in the dictionary, she was in the acknowledgements page. So this is important, and this is what I'm trying to put across in a way, that you too should be a part of building a dictionary like this, by being users and by making use of it. It's not a perfect tool, it's probably got, there's probably words now that are not yet in the Collins Dictionary, but users' help is also important in order to make something like this a living thing, an organic thing. I like to think that some of all this work that we all did, and I'm speaking on behalf of everybody that worked from the beginning from 1971 to the present on the different editions of the dictionary, has helped people to hand in better proses, has helped people maybe to translate books, to do perhaps, to translate documents, whether legal or otherwise, and even perhaps help people to write love letters rather than war letters. On that note, I'll leave you then on to the next speaker. Thank you very much for listening.